Hey, hi, welcome back to my channel where I like to talk about books. Are you looking for really good fantasy books? Because I feel like I always am looking for good fantasy books, especially if they're standalones. And I have two specific books to talk about with you today. And those are Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson and Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, also by Brandon Sanderson. Man, these are some like really pretty covers. Okay, so I wanted to do a little bit of like a back and forth discussion of these two books, mostly because they're both written by the same author. And even though they have some things in common, they actually have a lot of things that are pretty different. And I wanted to just like talk about those. I will be going into minor spoilers in the video. There won't be any major spoilers though. So yeah, it'll just be, I just want to give you a little synopsis of both books, give you a small intro on Brandon Sanderson. I want to touch upon the like fantasy magic system in both books. I want to talk about the characters, the writing style, and then just give you my review and rating of both the books and just tell you like what you can sort of expect going into them. Okay, so Tress and the Emerald Sea is about Tress, the main character, and she lives on this little rock in the middle of the sea, and her life is, you know, pretty chill, pretty nice. She has a job, she loves her family, she has a friend named Charlie whom she's very close to. And then one day Charlie leaves the island. His father, who I think is the Duke, takes him because he wants Charlie to get married. So they're going out in search of a bride or something like that. Just like someone for Charlie to marry, I think. So he leaves with his father, and then a couple of months later, Tress finds out that Charlie's in danger. So Tress leaves the island to look for Charlie and to help him out of that. So that's sort of the plot for Tress. Now, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is slightly different. The setting is, there's two settings. So there's Yumi's world, and then there's the Nightmare Painter's world. His name is Nikaro. So he has one world. He's in one world, she's in another world, and so it's kind of like a dual setting, dual POV situation going on. Yumi is a priestess. She does something called like rock stacking, and that causes spirits to, like, she summons spirits basically with the rock stacking and helps other people in the area get blessed because of these spirits. And Nikaro is a painter. He literally wields a brush, and he has to like draw paintings, and then those paintings capture nightmares because nightmares have the ability to like terrorize the people in his world. So Yumi and Nikaro get involved because of a certain situation, and then they kind of have to like pair up to take down this looming threat, I would say. Yeah. So both books are written by Brandon Sanderson. I did not know that much about him actually before I started reading this book. Before I started reading Tress. Tress was the first book that I read. So Brandon Sanderson is, I think, best known as like a fantasy and sci-fi author. He writes a little bit of YA. I think Tress can be considered partly YA. But yeah, mostly fantasy and sci-fi author, and he's famous for the Mistborn Saga and the Stormlight Archive. I think those are his big collections. And if I'm not wrong, I think all of his books are set in the Cosmere universe, which is pretty cool. I like that everything is just set in the same world. So if you're familiar with his works, then you're probably familiar with like the way the fantasy system like works and everything else. So I came across Tress of the Emerald Sea first. I didn't know too much about it. I heard that, so on the back, it says that it's a riveting standalone tale that will appeal to fans of The Princess Bride. So I've seen The Princess Bride a really long time ago. The movie was funny. I don't remember too much about it, but I remember thinking it was all right. But I like the fact that it was fairy tale esque when I read it, and then I read it. I fell in love with it. I loved Sanderson's writing. I thought he was so unique in the way that he told this tale. So I heard that Yumi and the Nightmare Painter was also one of his like standalone fantasy type novels. So I was like, sure, why not pick it up and see how it is? And I ended up loving it. So that was how I got into Sanderson. Now, again, as a reminder, I will be keeping this mostly spoiler free, but there will be minor spoilers for like the plot and some of the character stuff. So just a reminder. Okay, so I'm gonna start by talking a little bit about the overall plot and giving you a little bit of like the tone that you can expect. Tress of the Emerald Sea. Actually, I'm just gonna call it Tress from now. It's a really like lengthy title. Tress is about, like I said, it's like this adventure story sort of where Tress goes from being this like timid and shy girl who eventually learns how to be courageous and makes friends. And you know, yeah, I can't tell you more. It's a really cool, whimsical fairy tale esque story. It's told in more or less a linear fashion. It has a very like cozy, adventure, hopeful type feel to it. The thing I really loved about the story is that in the beginning, when Tress finds out that Charlie's in danger, she doesn't like sit around and wait for someone to come to help her, to like give her a plan, teach her what to do. She kind of thinks of a plan on her own and then just decides to execute it. She's like, my friend is in danger. I'm gonna go help him. And she just does the thing. So I loved that. I love that she just decided that I'm not gonna wait around. I'm just gonna do it myself, which is a thing I've always loved in heroines, you know. So that was cool about it. So with the plot of Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, it's a little back and forth because you're seeing Yumi's point of view in her world, and then you're seeing Nikaro's point of view in his world. And there's multiple things going on in the story, which is why there's like a back and forth type thing. There's also a very strong contrast both in the worlds and with the characters. But it's a cool contrast. Like it's more complimentary than it is like, oh, you know. It has a very dreamlike sort of, yeah, I guess I would say it just has like a dreamlike feeling and atmosphere to the book. The world does have a sort of whimsical and humorous point of view to it. Like even in Tress, there's a lot of whimsy and humor. And it's not the tone that you would fully expect when, with Yumi specifically, it's not the tone that you would expect because there's like, with the crisis and stuff that's going on, you don't see it coming. But the humor is a nice like breather. It's a nice refresher in between things that happen. So that was the plot. Now I want to touch a little bit upon the like magical element in the book, like the fantasy part of it and how it works. Because though both books have magic, they're both portrayed really differently, and it's interesting and unique and really like adds to the story. So in Tress, there are spores instead of water in the sea. So when you and I think of the sea, we think of, okay, it's a body of water. But seas and oceans in Tress's world are filled with spores. Now, each of these spores in different like bodies of spores, I don't know what you would call it, but each of these spore-like spaces react differently based on which one you go to. So like, oh, they all react really violently with water, which is pretty funny if you ask me. But yeah, so depending on which one you go to, like which sea you're at, they have different types of behavior and they have different like ecosystems and all of that stuff. So, and there's like a, what's the word for it? Like a range of how bad things are. Like there's a sea that's least dangerous and there's a sea that's like the most dangerous. So I think it's based on a color system. And I think that's why it's called Tress of the Emerald Sea, because it's been a while since I've read this book, but I'm pretty sure it's because like the Emerald Sea is kind of important to the story, obviously. Otherwise, why would it be in the title? But yeah, so there's like different seas, and I think they're all named by colors, like crimson and scarlet, maybe, or something like that. So that's what um the seas are like. And the seas play a really important role in the story. So, well, you'll see if you read the book. The book emphasizes more on like knowledge and being witty and just like thinking of creative solutions, as opposed to like straightforward magic, like not summoning things or bringing things about, but it's more like an environmental magic. But when it comes to Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, there's like two systems sort of in place. So Yumi is a priestess, and because of that, she has to arrange rocks in a certain way, and that like summons the spirits. And so that is a form of magic in itself, like her being able to summon the spirits. And obviously the like rock formation part of it is important. And then in Nikaro's world, there are nightmares. They descend from, actually, I don't know where they descend from, but they descend and then they wreak havoc and cause chaos. And so the way to trap them is for the nightmare painters to paint, and then the painting traps the nightmare in there. And so that is also a form of magic, being able to wield your brush, like kind of like a sword, I guess, to entrap these monsters. So the main difference is, I guess I would say, is that Tress has a more environmental outward type of magic, and then in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, the magic is more inward and dependent upon you and kind of like integral to the story because the characters like have to wield it. I want to touch a little bit upon the romance aspect of it because both books have elements of romance. Now, I'm not a big like romance book reader myself, but sometimes when you're in the mood for it and it's done really well, it can be fun. So in Tress of the Emerald Sea and Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, romance is there. I would say that they're both important parts of the story itself. In Tress of the Emerald Sea, the romance is really gentle and wholesome and sort of like a, I don't know if I would, no, it's not a slow burn. It's just a very slow, like gentle unfolding of a flower, I would say, kind of. So Tress and Charlie have this really great friendship. They have this deep, like, connection and affection that has built for each other over all the years that they've been friends. And as we journey through the story with Tress, you see that romance is kind of the anchoring point for her, as well as the motivator to get her out of her home and to do all these things because she wants to save Charlie. Romance is kind of the reason that it's kind of like the catalyst that has pushed the story forward, because if she wasn't in love with Charlie, then she might have not gone on that journey, right? So yeah, the romance is told in a very like fairy tale-esque way. It's very sweet, it's very innocent, it's very pure in a lot of its portrayals, which was just really wholesome and just wonderful to read. I don't think you're ever too late to read like fairy tale stuff. So that was really fun for me. I personally really like fairy tales, especially if they're retellings. Those are really fun. In Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, the romance is slightly different. I wouldn't say it's enemies to lovers, but it's more like opposites to lovers, because Yumi and Nikaro don't know each other in the beginning when they're acquainted. They have to kind of learn to deal with each other, to understand each other. And because of this budding and growing relationship, there's a lot of like insecurities and self-doubts and just like hidden things about yourself that you maybe don't want to deal with or you don't know how to deal with. Like they come to surface, and then because you now have this person that is encouraging you and pushing you to be like a better version of yourself, you learn how to deal with that stuff. So it is also really wholesome, their relationship, especially like the arc that it goes through. But the romance in the story is more central and pivotal than it is in Tress, I would say. They're thrown together in this sort of like uncontrollable scenario, and they don't have any choice but to push forward and deal with what's going on in front of them. So that's how the romance stays central. Like it's kind of their relationship is the crux that's sort of pushing the story forward. And we watch that unfold over the course of the story, right? Like these characters, who they were in the beginning is not who they are at the end because of this journey that they've gone through with each other. They've lived through these circumstances, and their romance really helps them to grow and to become better people. And in both instances, like in both books, I would say that the romance has really helped all these characters to grow. They weren't who they were at the beginning of the novel, which is the really beautiful part of it, because all of these things are happening, like life is happening to them, but then there's this other person who's helping them move along, like get better during the process, which I thought was really fun. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the main characters in both stories, so you just kind of have an idea of who they are. Tress is this timid and quiet and sort of like shy practical girl in the beginning of the novel. She goes on this incredible journey, and she grows into this courageous, bold, witty girl who I think she's always been, but it's like the journey that helps her bring out these character traits in her that perhaps she didn't know she could use. Charlie is also a really gentle and charming and just kind person. And he's a really great complementary character to Tress. As they grow in the story, you see that he becomes just more sure of himself that he wasn't really before. Yumi is really bound to her duty. She's very like, I wouldn't say uptight, but she's really rigid in the beginning of the novel. She's afraid. She wants to stick to this priestesshood that she's always known because that's been her whole life. And as we follow her in the story, she grows into this confident, bold young woman who realizes that there could be more to her life than just priestesshood. Nikaro, on the other hand, Nikaro is full of self-doubt and insecurities and is kind of ashamed and just like a very inward curled sort of person. Like when you're not confident in the things that you're doing, you sort of like shrink inwards. So that's sort of what Nikaro is like in the beginning. And then when he meets Yumi, his life changes a lot. He grows as a person. He learns to become more confident. He takes chances. He's less afraid. So they all grow in like this upward linear sort of direction. And it's just really cool to see their impact on each other as characters. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on Sanderson's writing style a little bit. If you've read any of Sanderson's books, then you probably know better than I what his style is like. But from what I've experienced in these books, Sanderson is really funny. He's really witty. So specifically in Tress, right, the language is really easy to understand. It's very approachable. Oh man, it is so funny. That book is hilarious. Like the narrator in that book constantly breaks the fourth wall at all the right places. And it's really funny. It's done really well. It's whimsical. The tone is great. Also, the chapters are really short. Okay. Like some of the chapters are almost 2 pages long, which makes you, like it's like 3 pages. It gives you this really nice feeling of accomplishment when you go through the book and you're just like, oh, I've read so many chapters, and you feel good about it. So that was important to me. Like I like that you can easily digest some of these chapters. It was fun. In Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, the writing style is more dreamlike and more intimate. I think there's a lot of like introspection and self-reflection in some of the way that he's written some things, because these characters, Like it's more character inward focused than in Tress. I would say there's a lot of emphasis on like external things as well. So that's how I would say the writing styles are sort of different. They're both really fun and interesting to read, even though I couldn't fully tell that they were written by the same author if I didn't know. So I thought that was really unique. I think it's interesting that he built these two worlds that are so different, yet they exist within the same like Cosmere universe, which I thought was really cool. Lastly, I want to give you my rating and my review of both the books. So I rated Tress. I rated Tress of the Emerald Sea a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I thought the whimsical fairy tale storytelling type was just, it hit it out of the park for me. I am a sucker for all things that are hopeful and romantic and wholesome. Not even so much the romance, it was just the hope and the ambition and the way that these characters are portrayed that really did it for me. You don't see some of these arcs that the characters are going on, and then when they do these things that surprise you, it's just amazing. Plus Sanderson has this way to really get you to care about these characters and their lives and the things that they care about, and I ate it up. I thought it was awesome. I fully was invested in Tress's story. So that's why I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Now, I gave Yumi and the Nightmare Painter a 4 out of 5 stars. The world was really interesting. It was really unique. The situation and in how like Nikaro and Yumi get involved is really cool. I thought that was a refreshing like take in fantasy that I hadn't seen before. Maybe I haven't read that much fantasy. I don't know. But I loved it. I thought it was really unique. I thought the way that their relationship evolved was also really fun. There were takes in there with their relationship that was just really funny to me, you know, like the banter and teaching each other things that teaching another person something that you think is really basic to you, but that person's never done it before, you know? So that was really cool, especially the fact that like Yumi was a priestess and she's been really sheltered and only has lived this kind of life. And then Nikaro comes from like a completely different background. And then how they were able to like get each other's worlds to expand, I thought that was awesome. So yeah, I really loved both books. I would highly recommend that you give both of them a shot. Especially if you're looking for standalone fantasy, I would recommend starting with either one of the two, really. I believe that there is a version of this book that comes with illustrations. Unfortunately, mine does not have any illustrations, but the cover is very beautiful. So if you're someone who likes illustrations in their books, then maybe that's like a version you want to check out. Yeah, so if you're looking for a fantasy novel to pick up next, maybe this could be something that you give a shot, because I loved both of them. I would highly recommend starting with it. And if you have read Brandon Sanderson's works before, please let me know in the comments. What have you read? What did you love about it? And what kind of fantasy would you like recommend for me to read? Because I'm always looking for good new fantasy books to start. Not that I don't already have a lot. I do. But yeah, please let me know your thoughts and your comments. And as usual, I hope you have a really good week and you're having a really good day, and happy reading.